We finally get to learn about physics and how it works within Live2D, and for me personally, it's one of the most fun things to do when I'm rigging a model. So let's start with how it works. As you know from previous lessons, there's two main ways we'll use parameters, either for the movement of the model or for the physics of a model. Live2D's physics works by using one parameter as the input and the other as the output. In most cases, movement parameters like angle x will be input parameters, as these are the core movements of the model. Now, an output parameter could be like the front hair physics parameters, and this is because when we move our input parameter, or angle x, we want the physics parameters of our hair to shake back and forth, making it look like it's following gravity. The key to this movement is something we call a pendulum. It links two parameters together and makes the output parameter follow the exact movement of the input parameter. However, the key is that you can change the settings of the pendulum to make the output parameter move faster, slower, or bounce back and forth, but only when it's moved by the input. Think about it like the input parameter moves the top of the pendulum, and the output parameter follows whatever swinging motion the bottom of the pendulum does. Changing the pendulum settings will allow for different types of physics movements, but we'll cover that at the end. That's why physics seems to move randomly on VTuber models, but also kind of makes sense in the direction that it's moving. The pendulum is swinging randomly, but it's controlled by an input that should only move that physics. So do go back and watch that over if needed, because it's important that you understand how physics works before we go and set it up for ourselves. Now, you don't have anything rigged with physics right now, and that's because you're still learning the fundamentals, but I made a study file for you to download in the description so you can practice setting up physics for yourself, as well as play around with the settings of the pendulum to see what they do. Don't worry, all the lessons in the future will help you create your physics parameters and deformer movements, so for now, let's just focus on how to set up the physics. So first, we need to access the physics window, and you can do this by going to modeling in your top menu bar and then to physics settings. A window will pop up, and this is a window you'll get quite familiar with. So again, using the free study file, you can see nothing is set up at the moment. The first thing we need to do is create a physics group. A group is just an input parameter, a pendulum, and an output parameter. It's basically one set of physics for one part of the model. So let's press the Add button and name this group. We'll name it Front Hair Physics, as it's the group that will control the physics of the front hair, or in this case, just this one strand. This drop-down menu over here has the group that we just created, and it will have any other physics groups that you make. Now for the window itself, we have an input tab, an output tab, and a window down here for the pendulum and its settings. So let's add an input parameter by pressing the Add button in the input settings window. We'll select our input parameter, again, let's use angle x, press OK, and now we'll see that it adds angle x to our list. We now need to change the effectiveness from 0 to 100, and think of this like the strength of the movement. 100 means we want it to move with 100% strength. Next, we can add our pendulum. So down at the bottom, we can select one of the presets from the dropdown. Let's select Hair Triple Pendulum and press Import. The pendulum will now appear in this window here. Now you're probably wondering, why does it have 3 points? This is because you can link multiple output parameters to different points on the pendulum. This is what allows you to get that flowy top-down look in your physics. It's something we'll go deeper into later on, but in short, we have physics parameters that control different areas of our art. For instance, our hair strand has 3 different physics parameters. x1, which moves the entire strand, x2, which moves it from the middle down, and x3, which only moves the tip. Now let's see how this actually works with the pendulum. We can go into our Output Settings tab and add our physics parameters. Press Add, and then scroll down and add hair x1, x2, and x3. Select them and press OK. Now on our list, you can see all 3 parameters, and beside them there's a pendulum number. These are the same numbers as the dots on our pendulum. So you can see hair x1 follows the first dot, hair x2 follows the second, and hair x3 follows the third. So when the pendulum swings these dots, it'll move the parameters in the same way. We can use our mouse to click and drag on the canvas, and you'll start to see the pendulum and the physics start to move around. And that's pretty much how physics works. We rig the movements onto our physics parameters, we make a physics group, select an input movement, add our output physics, and change the pendulum settings to decide how it moves. Again, we'll cover all of these things again in the future as they're needed. Now there's a couple other things we should touch on just so you have the full understanding of all the physics basics you need to finish your model. First is that output parameters have this thing called output maximum. This is a setting that controls the percentage of the output parameter's range being used. We want this to be at 100% so that the output physics parameter is moving at its full range. You can fix this by first moving your model around, and then once the number starts to stay still, you can use the increase or decrease output buttons to set this number to 100. Secondly, input parameters have 2 types, position X or angle, and you can change that with this drop down here. This is just how the pendulum will move. Position X will shift the entire pendulum side to side, while angle will only rotate the pendulum at an angle. The key difference is that position X will always make your output parameters return to 0, while angle will keep your output parameters stuck in a place. For example, we'll use position X for hair's angle X physics because we want the hair to return to normal after the head's done shaking. But for something like our hair's angle Z physics, we want the hair to stay facing downward or being pulled down by gravity, so we'll use angle instead. In summary, one returns the physics to normal, the other holds it in place. Lastly, we have our pendulum settings. They're kind of tricky to understand, but the easiest way I can explain them to you is this. From left to right, we have duration, which is how long the movement will take, shaking influence, which is how much our pendulum will shake, reaction time, which is how fast the pendulum points will move following the input movement, and convergence speed, which is how quickly a pendulum will return back to its default state. You can definitely take the time to play around with these settings and see how they will affect your physics. And with that, you have your basic understanding of physics and everything you need to rig your first model. This entire fundamentals course was designed for you to reference if you needed reminders on tools or methods while you were rigging, so be sure to check out any of the previous lessons when you need them. You're on your way to becoming a fantastic Live2D artist, so keep up the great work and the learning. I'll see you inside of the VTuber workshop.